We got Mr. Big Spender, Mark Carney, announcing a $9 billion budget for going towards our national defense. And that was announced yesterday, and that was a big announcement. People were really excited about it. We'll talk about that. And then Chrystia Freeland got checked in the House of Commons during question period yesterday on, well, the Liberal plan to bring down housing costs by introducing modular housing, and the Conservatives, well, had nothing good to say about that. And last but not least, CIBC CEO comes out in defense of young people, the people underneath the age of 30. He has a radical idea of how the government can truly help these people get ahead and be treated proper for how they've been screwed by the government. We got some interesting things to talk about. Welcome to the LA Podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Josh. I'm grateful to be back on with you yet again. Thanks for joining me. If you get any value from this show, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the show, helps us to grow, and helps us to get to new audiences who have not heard about us yet and are looking for a different voice when it comes to politics here in this country. Now let's get into our first story, shall we? As I said, we got a lot of things to talk about today, one of which was Chrystia Freeland in the House of Commons yesterday talking about the modular housing strategy the Liberals are coming on to. And the Conservatives retorted that idea in question period and says, not so fast, we're not buying into it. And well, here's the exchange right here.
Prime Minister campaigned on was building modular housing. That is a way to get more homes built faster. And we know that by removing barriers to internal trade in our country.
And look here, just before she continues, you see the right-hand corner of the video, you have the housing minister, and he's nodding along with absolute arrogance, saying, yeah, that's the way. That's the way. I only increased the housing market ridiculously while I was mayor of Vancouver, but no, that's the way we're going to do it. Watch him nod along arrogantly.
We can get a modular housing industry going in our country. Exactly. That is one of the solutions to the housing crisis. I hope the members opposite will be constructive and support this important legislation.
Honourable member for York Durham.
Mr. Speaker, my generation refuses to live in a shipping container. Oxford Economics reports yesterday that Toronto's housing market ranks among the worst in the world for affordability. At the same time, mortgage delinquency rates in Toronto are higher than at any time during the pandemic. The financial burden is suffocating the next generation of homebuyers. And history has shown us, Mr. Speaker, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. A budget is a plan, Mr. Speaker. So my question to the Prime Minister is, when will Canadians see one?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Family.
Mr. Speaker, I've traveled all across this country. It's a huge privilege of this job, and I visited families in every riding from every walk of life, and I can tell you that modular housing, which provides a housing solution for so many families, is not a shipping container. And to speak with such a demeaning tone about families that are living in a variety of different kinds of housing really indicates the kind of disrespect that the Conservative Party of Canada has for low-income Canadians and middle-income Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
I found this to be a fascinating exchange because, honestly, both sides of the argument are not necessarily wrong. And I know, whoa, Josh, what are they talking about here? Yeah, I get it, but hear me out. So we're talking about modular housing. Those who know the space and you've seen modular houses built, you know that not all modular houses are built the same. There are modular houses that are built for 3-bedroom homes that are 2,000 square feet, that are well put together. And I know I have friends and family who both own modular homes that they bought, put on a piece of land, and they enjoy them very much so, and they find them very dependable. However, the reason why you had MP York Durham there, Jacob Mantle, speaking up saying, my generation is going to refuse modular housing from this government because I refuse to live in a shipping container. Well, this was in reference to Olivia Chow setting up shipping container living situations for seniors in Toronto. That is what's playing in a lot of Canadians' minds at this point in time. And so while the Liberals here are saying, guys, come on, man, there are different types of modular housing. They're not shipping containers, is the right point to make. However, to go so quickly to, oh, you're demeaning the lower class by saying you don't want to live in a shipping container. that then also led credence to the criticism that Jacob Mantle brought forward, saying, no, you're actively looking to lower our living standards in this country, and we refuse to accept it. Me saying we want higher standards isn't me demeaning people in those situations. It's us as Canadians demanding that we want better, and you're not delivering it, simply put. And when you look at Carney's plans, it was never about home ownership. It was just about building housing. And how do you build housing fast, specifically 500,000 units they're promising? Well, yes, you have to do them with modular homes, but you're not going to be building 500,000 units of modular 3-bedroom homes. They're going to be 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom shoe boxes, and you're going to call them homes. That's really the only way you can do it at scale, because there's no way on God's green earth you're building 500,000 3-bedroom homes in Canada in the time frame that they specified. It's not going to happen. And quite frankly, it's not going to happen with the 1-bedroom units either. However, they want to build modular buildings for people to live in. And right here, Jacob Mantle may have not addressed it properly. The point he's hitting on is a very real concern people have, is the housing that Mark Carney's planning seems to be in line with smaller housing situations, lowering living standards, and not the Canadian dream that people have come to know and learn, where they can have a 3-bedroom home on a good piece of land that they can raise a family and enjoy their lives raising that family. Because when Mark Carney's talking about house building, he's just talking about housing. He's never talked about home ownership. He only talked about housing, meaning that if you're going to try and build this stuff at scale, those contracts are going to have to go to somebody. And what we've talked about during the campaign is likely going to Brookfield. And that's where a lot of this is going. And that's where the Conservatives are coming from. Now it's incumbent upon them to start communicating that properly in the House of Commons. Because what Jacob did there, I get where he was coming from. However, you saw what the Liberals are able to do and twist his words so quickly. You have to be more deliberate and more direct when you're criticizing the Liberals' plans, so you can actually shine light on the issues that are really at hand and the concerns that people actually have. I appreciate the passion. I appreciate what he brought forward. But right now, as I said, Carney's more cunning, and he's coaching his team to be as cunning as him. And they'll find whatever way they can to twist your words. So you have to be deliberate, tactful, and calculated in how you're going to address these things moving forward, or they're going to twist those words super quick, and Canadians are going to think that you just hate poor people. That's the truth. That's the reality. You can like it or not, but that is what we are seeing on the ground currently, and that's how we're in the situation in the first place, and how the Conservatives lost the election was on messaging, and that's just the point. That's just the reality, unfortunately. Because when you move over and we shift our focus to our next story, the CEO of CIBC actually put forward a solution that would really help young people. It's not the be-all end-all. It's not, this is going to be the truth and this is how it's got to go. But it's an idea that's radical. It's an idea that got me excited. I'm like, man, a CEO of a bank's getting me excited. Those guys I normally hate. But this one, I was like, dude, this guy might be onto something. However, there's no politician who would dare touch it because, well, they might be just too afraid. However, this is what he had to say. CIBC chief calls for tax changes to help young Canadians struggling to save money. Catch this article from the Globe and Mail, folks. CIBC chief executive officer Victor Dodich gave a warning about what he sees as one of the country's biggest issues: young Canadians not being able to save enough to afford homes. True homes, not modular homes that are 1-bedroom, 1.5, 2 bedrooms. True 3-bedroom homes. To help address the problem, the CEO at a conference today hosted by the Globe and Mail called on policymakers for tax changes to help Canadians under the age of 30 build up their savings. Now catch this, okay, folks? Very interesting. Mr. Dodich said the federal government should help young people save and said he has been advocating for an incentive that would help. For Canadians under the age of 30, raise the tax exemption threshold before they start paying income tax to $75,000. Did you catch that? $75,000. Mr. Dodich said the threshold should be increased for young Canadians, provided they are also saving at least $15,000 in a tax-free savings account, first-time home savings account, or other accounts. Currently, age largely does not play a factor in how much in taxes Canadians pay. The system is mostly based on how much individuals earn and where they live. Canadians in the lowest tax bracket pay 15% income tax on the portion of taxable income that is $57,375 or less. Prime Minister Mark Carney plans to cut the lowest personal income tax rate to 14% from 15% on July 1st. The tax cut is expected to cost the government $27 billion over 5 years. People may not like it, but I think it has some merit, Mr. Dodich said of his idea. They'll save for a home so that when it's time to buy 10 years from now, they'll have saved up to $150,000 to $250,000 and have money for the down payment. As I said, it's not the be-all end-all. It's not a silver bullet. However, these are the types of ideas that I think should be brought to the table. and really considered by our policymakers. Could you imagine how big that would be for young people, people under 30? I'm no longer in that age demographic, and I'm advocating for this. It should be a tool used of a variety of use to bring down and help people afford the lives they want to live. Could you imagine, as a young person, for the first 12 years of your working life, 10 years of your working life, you don't pay any tax on the first $75,000 you make, and you get to keep all of it in income taxes? That is a radical idea, and it would give these kids a shot at living a life worth living. Not a life where, yeah, you can save up $800,000 to be able to afford a shed in Toronto. No, give them something to get excited about, something to look forward to. And I think Mr. Dotage hit it right here. And you put this in comparison to what we saw in House of Commons, and what the Conservative MP was getting at is he just wants something that his peers can get excited about. And when you sit across from the Minister of Transport, former Minister of Finance, saying, we're building modular homes, and we know what kind of modular homes they're aiming for. And it's not the ones that people are going to get excited about. We're talking about 600, 700, maybe 1,000 square foot homes. World War II style. Heard that term used a lot. Well, those are the types of homes they built back then too. It is fascinating. So we'll see where this goes. But I think that these are the types of ideas that need to be brought forward to put pressure on this government. And it's great to see it from a big 5 bank CEO saying, this is probably something you should consider. Because Mark Carney lately has been considering some big moves, some big money moves. He announced $9 billion of funding going towards our military to then meet our 2% NATO target. And it was fascinating because O'Toole got on a CIBC program saying, yeah, honestly, I like where he's going with it. However, it may not be everything that it seems to be.
Well, I think it's a great step. It's something that the Conservatives have been calling for many years. It's something that I, in Parliament for years, advocated as a military veteran. Canada was a linchpin in starting NATO, and it's been an important alliance for the Western world. And in the last few decades, we hadn't been paying our fair share. In fact, a few years ago, Prime Minister Trudeau said we would never make the 2% target. So I think this was a very positive step, a commitment, and the Prime Minister's discussion of how alliances, intelligence sharing, global trade is all in disruption, and Canada needs to be more secure and needs to depend on new allies in some cases. So I think it's generally positive. There is a little bit of sleight of hand going on here, and he even alluded to that, saying he wasn't doing this to make NATO accountants happy. I think sliding over the Coast Guard, he's artificially making 2%, I would suggest, in the first year. But I like the commitment. Let's really do this for the long term. And I think there's Canadian Armed Forces deserve better pay. We need to improve our infrastructure. A lot can be done in the Arctic. So I'm generally very positive, although I do think this was done ahead of the G7, ahead of the NATO meetings, to make it seem that we're meeting the target a little faster than we truly are.
He makes some interesting points. Specific one where we're talking about the Coast Guard, that's a part of DFO, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, looking to move them over to the Defense Department, so as to kind of make those numbers look a little bit bigger than they are. And more so, we have to keep in mind, as he said, the timing of this is we have the G7 meeting here in a week or two, and you're going to be talking to fellow NATO allies, and they're going to be asking, mainly Mr. Trump is going to be asking, what have you done? How are you going to meet your 2% NATO targets? And well, this seems like a banker's move to make it seem like something that it may not truly be. And Vashti Kapelos brought this up with the Chief of Defense on her show last night, and this was her response.
Is it, though, just kind of benefiting from, in part at least, a shifting of numbers? For example, the Coast Guard that you bring up. During the technical briefing, we were told they would still fall under the Ministry of Fisheries, that it wouldn't involve arming the Coast Guard. And then later in the day, the Prime Minister's office said, oh, actually, it would be moving to the Department of National Defense. We don't have more clarity on whether or not they'd be armed. Like, are we just shifting the budget over in order to make the number?
I've been trying to configure this field for an hour, but this CRM sucks. Maybe it's time to stand up to these slow, archaic...
So no, this is not creative accounting, if this is what we're talking about.
Correct, yeah.
Absolutely not. So this is really about providing us for what we need to actually affect defense for Canada and Canadians. So currently, and as per the past, and all NATO allies do the same thing, within defense spending, what you account for is there is clear NATO definitions to do that. And we have always accounted for the work that the Coast Guard has been doing, for example, in relation to defense and security in the maritime domain, as an example. So a portion of their budget was already accounted for within the defense budget, and so on and so forth. But within NATO, there are clear accounting measures and ways to define what goes towards defense, and we are absolutely going by that as well.
Which makes a fair point. However, taking a segment of a budget of the Coast Guard and making that part of the defense versus taking a whole team from one department and moving them fully to another department for the sake of budgetary reasons is two very different things. And yes, that's kind of what we're seeing happen. We're seeing a little bit of sleight of hand on the accounting side to make it look like we're doing something. However, there has been some big spending coming from it. So $2.6 billion of this $9 billion is going to go to recruitment and retention. $1 billion is going to military capabilities. So new aircraft, armed vehicles, ammunition. We're going to see $2.1 billion going to defense industrial strategy. This aims to boost Canada's defense industrial capacity, including diversifying defense relationships beyond the U.S. and integrating the Canadian defense industry into Europe's rearmament program. That's an interesting one, isn't it? Repair and sustainment, equipment and infrastructure, $844 million. Digital foundations and cyber defense, $560 million. Defensive Research Bureau, and so on and so forth. It kind of, there's, smaller bits and pieces that kind of make up that $9 billion number. I got to about $6.5 billion there, accounting of main estimates, as Mark Carney would say. So we'll see where this goes, but people just want to know, where is this money coming from? People want to hear, yes, we're great, awesome, we're funding our military. That's great, we needed that. However, people just want to know where it's coming from. People aren't being critical of the move to fund our military. We've acknowledged that we need that. However, are we funding them in a smart way that is actually going to help us and not completely cripple us? Or are we just doing it to satisfy some NATO accountants, as Mark Carney would say? So we saw the Canadian Taxpayers Federation do their own poll and found that 45% of Canadians want to see the government reduce spending. 45%. Where only 20% want to see a net increase. So as much as there's a lot of division in our politics right now, division between parties at this point in time, 45%, almost half the country is like, yeah, we need to reduce spending. This is getting crazy. Only 20% of the country thinks we need to increase it. But there is 19% of the country that believe we need to maintain what we're currently doing. Yikes on that amount. So we'll see where all this goes. Yes, as I said, we want to see the spending into our military. However, we just want to make sure it's done responsibly. It should make sense with the balance sheet. We should be looking to aim to be balancing our budget, as much as Trudeau made that a naughty word over his time as Prime Minister. People want to see a trend towards fiscal responsibility. Mark Carney has not promised that necessarily. And so, yes, we love to see the spending in military. However, we want to make sure it's done responsibly, and that's where the criticisms are coming from. So we'll wait and see. But anyways, enjoy your day. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.